Hello there, my peoples. How are you doing? It's Christy. It is Sunday where I am, and that means it's time for another weekend winter. So, hello! I see people are already there in the chat, so let me say hi to some of the people who've shown up already. Mike Bala Jr., how was the pizza the other night? I put it in the microwave Umluft setting for like 215 for 15 minutes and was definitely not frozen, but it certainly was not quite yet baked properly. So still learning how to use my microwave as a grill / convection oven. I don't have a physical oven. My flat is very, very tiny. I have two, what they call heads. I have two stove units, a smaller one and a bigger one. And that's the extent of, that and a microwave is the extent of my kitchen supplies in terms of heating things up. Well, I've got a kettle for water and everything else, but yeah. I also see that we've got James in the hello. Jared is here, and Mithril as well, and John. Hey, John. And Memento Memory as well. Wow, so many people already here. Good morning, everyone. Right. Okay. So I have a busy day ahead of me. I'm going to get going on this pretty quick. I'm also going to might even end up leaving a bit early. I have to catch a train tonight, a little after 5, to go to Netherlands to do some work for my job Monday through Wednesday. So in my head, I'm sort of already starting to physically pack. And in my head, I'm packing. I have to take my video equipment. Anyway, you guys don't need to hear about that. Just to say, if this week's show ends up a little bit shorter than usual, it's because in my mind, half of me is going, don't miss your train, don't miss your train, don't miss your train. So that'll be it. But I do have a show lined up. I woke up this morning quite wonderfully, got naturally a little before 8 o'clock, so I had a very leisurely morning, was able to relax and have lots of coffee in my mocha cup as well, my beautiful mocha cup. Oh, and I made you guys a new video. I was getting a little tired of the fire. The fire was, you know, from last January and December time even, and it was nice and cozy for the winter months, but I decided that it was time for a change. And the change that I've made, you guys can see in the upper corner right there, yeah, this way, there, no, the other way, is really cute, sweet videos of dogs. Mostly, I think it's all dogs that I've done there. That's meant to be visual therapy for all of us, so that when things get stressful and you can just look at the puppies and go, oh. The other thing too you might want to notice, or I'll explain, which way do I, no, this way. This is my Makea B t-shirt, advocate for the corrupt ideas of the postmodern neo-Marxists. So that's my show. So you're competing with Jordan Peterson propaganda or cute, adorable little puppies. There's no way anyone's going to pay attention to me when there are puppies on the screen, is there? All right. So, people are saying, hello, afternoon, cute puppies. See, doesn't it just make everything a little bit easier to take when there are cute puppies? And I don't think there's no Crufts video here, so I shouldn't get hit with any copyrights. But I did just take what people put up on Twitter, offered as, look at my dog is so cute. And I turned that into a compilation of adorable dogs. Oh, this one is my favorite because this is me in the morning. That tan dog. That tan dog is so me in the morning. It's funny, it's up there 3 times. I'm not quite sure why that's on there 3 times, but I'm glad it is. Okay, that was it. The tan dog relate, and now we can move on. I did put together a show. What show did I put together? Welcome. We've done that one. Nerdiness. Oh yes, we're going to do some nerdiness today with discourse analysis. Then I have on my list, let's talk about Joe. Then possibly a break, and then maybe PragerU, because I had a pretty good time last week doing that, although it went an hour, which I didn't realize. And maybe then my bookmarks, because my bookmarks are like when there's nothing else going on. But we might not even get to bookmarks this week, so we can just focus on the main content, and I can get out of here a little bit earlier. So people are liking the shirt, yes, advocate for the, yeah. And digging the puppies. All right, let's have a look at some nerdiness. Last time we got together, so I don't want to switch the screen because they're so cute. I want to like leave the cuteness. This one especially is just so adorable. That's also me with a coffee cup, like drinking out of my mug. All right. The nerdiness that we did last time, goodbye Pops, was that we looked at Popper's reasoning on how do we distinguish science from pseudoscience, because he acknowledged science sometimes gets things wrong, and pseudoscience, by chance, sometimes happens to get things right. How do we know when a statement can be called scientific or not? And one of the criteria he gave us to determine that was to look if we could make a prediction that allowed that we made a prediction that could conceivably be shown to be wrong. If my theory is correct, the world should look like this. If my theory is incorrect, the world will not look like this. And allowing for a possibility to be wrong, the ability to reject, to accept a null hypothesis that your theory isn't correct is actually the starting point. Assume you're wrong, and then let the evidence overcome that to demonstrate your theory must be correct because the evidence shows it. So by trying to prove yourself wrong, you are then forced to accept that you're right if the data support the theory. And that is a good cognitive way to get over bias. So that's what we did with nerdiness last week. This time I thought I would dig out lecture notes from back in the day when I was teaching both quantitative and qualitative research methods. And that meant how to design sociological or social research, how to collect the data ethically and like the quality of it, and then how to analyze it and come to conclusions and what your conclusions can conceivably be and when you might be going a little too far. All right. I pulled up my academia.edu page from the internet. That's where I deposited all of my teaching materials when I left teaching, because I put a lot of work into them, I put a lot of effort into them, and I didn't want them to just sit on a hard drive somewhere. To be honest, I am constantly getting updates that people are downloading these lecture notes. The statistical significance one gets a lot of downloads, comparative analysis gets a lot of downloads, and there's one other one that tends to get a lot of downloads. But people are looking for easily digestible, clear ways of understanding how to do social research. So I'm really happy that I have put these up and made them available. We're going to do this now. We're going to talk about discourse analysis. And so let's talk about how language plays a role in our understanding of the social. Now, from one perspective, and this won't be the perspective a qualitative researcher would take, but a common, we'll call it enlightenment view of language, is that language is a tool, and we use this tool to describe the world. It's like, language is like a hammer. You can pick up a hammer and you can build a house with it, or you can smash somebody's head in it. But people in this case would say, the hammer is an independent object, and how it's used, that determines it. But the hammer itself is just a tool. It's not neutral. It's not good or bad or anything. And the reason why that doesn't apply to language is, well, we'll see. Now, again, from this perspective, the language we use are a series of neutral tools at our disposal that we use to describe the world around us. And the world's, in this case, the words is reflecting the world as it is. Right? The assumption here is that because the terms are neutral and objective, they are accurately describing the world. They don't shape the world. Well, we kind of, on the other hand, from a perspective of a qualitative analysis, language is not a neutral medium through which we describe the world, that it's all sort of value neutral language itself, and then people use it in valued ways. Language itself is value laden, and language itself contributes to shaping our understanding and our experiences and our lives. And by analyzing language itself as a not neutral thing, we can then increase our understanding of how values underpin language, how words are reproduced and replicated, how language is contested in certain areas, or even changed to reflect a new perception of, reality. So what is discourse? That's a kind of really frustratingly vague term. There's a lot of different definitions for it because depending on how specialized you are into discourse, you can get people saying this part of discourse is here or whatever else. You can say it's language in use, although that's not very helpful. So I was just saying to my students, look, it's language in use within a specific context, it's grounded in values, it's interconnected with other words, identities, and meanings. So the idea of a free market discourse or new capitalist discourse or performing gender, these are all ways of understanding language. Now, according to Guy, who wrote a really, really great book, John Paul Guy, Introduction to Discourse Analysis, I think, he talks about the role that discourse plays, how recognition plays an important role to understanding discourse. Let me just quote him. If you put language, action, interaction, values, beliefs, symbols, objects, tools, and places together in such a way that others recognize you as a particular type of who, engaged in a particular type of what, here and now, then you have pulled off a discourse. Right, so this is, pulling that all together. It's kind of vague, but it's explaining how that process of identity, action, and language come together to form discourse analysis, or a discourse. There are many, many different types of discourse analysis. The way that we can look at language is varied depending on what it is that we want to study. What is our object of analysis? The first example I provided is conversation analysis, and that's the study of talk in natural settings. Not an interview, not a focus group. It is looking at how people are talking to each other in the way that they put together words and slang or professional terms or acronyms or whatever else. The point is to uncover the underlying structures of talk. And conversation analysis assumes, as its sort of starting point, that talk itself is structured, that talk is forged contextually, which means within a setting, and that the analysis for it is grounded in data. You'd have to record people's conversations and then transcribe them and look at them to see how they put their conversations together. And of course, we don't think about how we necessarily always put language together. We're kind of on autopilot. So when we go into, a professional setting, we're going to automatically suppress any, well, maybe not, but I certainly suppress any push to use foul language, because it's going to be reflected as unprofessional, and I don't need to really think consciously about that. So, looking at me and how I talk on the happy hour versus how I talk at a conference, you would see very different ways that I structure my conversations. Another form of analysis is called discourse analysis. It studies the way in which linguistic categories refer not only to objects in the world, but how these categories come to constitute objects themselves. It aims to understand how language constitutes or produces the social world. So a traditional discourse analysis isn't just looking, let's say, at the structure of talk. It's looking at how the two people in the conversation construct their understanding of the world. Like a Fox News watcher and an MSNBC watcher having a conversation, how they, the way that they use language and the values, the things that they present. All of this is an insight into their perception of the social world, or the social world that they want to see us living in. And critical discourse analysis places an emphasis on power and its use and distribution while it's analyzing the social world. Common critical discourse analysis is Marxist analysis is critical discourse. You see feminist analysis would be critical discourse analysis. It's not only looking at how language shapes the social world, it's saying there is power that some people are given, and that power structure is built into the language, and it's reproduced through language in part. Whether that's, the idea of, the middle class in America instead of calling people working class. That is a just deliberate attempt to disassociate people from their labor. If you make $20,000 a year and you're calling yourself middle class because it's not sort of, or lower middle class or lower middle class, American discourse has pretty much eliminated the phrase working class from politics. What you might get is working class families, And that family part of it is meant to remove it, again, from a more Marxist position and locate it in terms of individualism. So that's an example of how a critical discourse analysis could look at the way the term class, working class in America is absent when you compare the discourse of American politicians, even on the left, to European politicians on the left. Okay. Yeah, and Foucault, for instance, studied language as a system of representation of language and practice, and that approach takes or took as its key subject the relationship between knowledge, power, and the body. He's very interested in like physicality and body in one part of his career. So it sees knowledge as meshed with in relations of power because it is applied to the regulation of social conduct and the body. Content analysis is often used. I'm going to get on like a little bit. This is more like the what ifs, and I'm trying to get beyond this. But content analysis uses counting really and more who, what, where, when, why questions to analyze media, especially newspapers, more so than other stuff like television stuff. It's just newspapers are a lot. There's a long-running data set on newspaper media content analysis and the kinds of things that they ask. So moving on. Another one is narrative analysis. I told you there's a lot of forms of discourse analysis. Narrative analysis looks at the way that we tell our stories. And it might seem like it couldn't be very interesting, you know, but one of the articles we wrote that I'm proudest of, we used narrative analysis to show that there were very different patterns of storytelling between Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem, Green, UKIP, and undecided voters, if they had decided how they were going to vote before the election or if they made up their minds quite late. In particular, anyone, regardless of who they were, if they had decided how they were going to vote before the election started, when we asked them what was the story of your election day, like what happened, when did you go to the polls, everything else, almost always they started off by saying, well, I knew I was going to vote Labour, and then the story, or Conservative, or Lib Dem, whatever else. And then the story was basically an explanation of how their behaviors mapped onto their predetermined decision. People who made up their minds quite late started their stories with like a suspense, like, well, I didn't really know how I was going to vote. And then their stories talked about their process of reaching a decision. So the structures of the stories themselves were dependent upon whether or not the voter had already made up their minds or not. So we saw that as an interesting phenomenon. All right. Now, this is what I wanted to get to. And running, how late are we already? Like, I'm finally on this point. I don't even know. Oh, wow, that's pretty. This is from Guy's book, which I found, it's a little bit dated now because it's been a while since I've had to teach, and I'm sure that there's a more updated version, but I'm citing the one that I used here when I was teaching circa 2009, I guess, 2008, 2009, from the book I mentioned before about Introduction to Discourse Analysis. And this is what I really wanted to get to, and I want you guys to think about when you hear people using language and asking yourself these things. So when you're doing, let's say, Guy's form of discourse analysis, what are the questions you ask yourself to understand how people are constructing or using language? One, like, use it with Dave Rubin, or use it on Jordan Peterson. You know, like, maybe, like, I don't have time, we might get to PragerU, you know, we could ask ourselves some of these questions, but significance, how does the speaker give people or things meaning or value? So the question you can ask yourself is, how is this piece of language being used to make certain things significant or not? And in what ways? So it's also important not to only look for what is presented, but also understanding, because people have biases, what is being downplayed or omitted from significance. I think we can look at like PragerU using the term leftism and then not actually giving a proper definition and equating it with progressivism, so they can just say leftism, leftism, leftism instead of talking about progress. Here, you know, they're trying to give a certain kind of negative significance to that term and using it in that way. So one question, what is being made significant? Another thing we can look for when we look at how people talk is, how are they using language to make it clear what it is we should be doing or other people should be doing. So what activity or activities does a piece of language being used, how is it being used to enact those activities? So it's not just that people are giving an opinion. It can be an actual process of, as I say, what activity or activities in a piece of language is being used to enact. It might be to recognize someone, or to give someone legitimacy, or to deny someone a legitimacy. That's the aim or the activity of the language. Identity. We use language to be recognized as taking on certain identities or roles. We use language to build identities in the here and now. And we have to enact, we use language to enact identities, in certain times, in certain places. One of the things I can say is that even though I've been an immigrant to Europe, I emigrated from the United States to Europe in 2004, I think it was, I don't really take on the identity of immigrant. It's something that kind of I realize the extent to which I am such an immigrant, and yet immigrant is not part of my sort of what I talk about. I talk about being, white, feminist, woman, middle class, family from, the Midwest, all these sorts of things. But in terms of an immigrant discourse, that's not one that I identify with. So we can look at language and ask ourselves, what identity or identities is a language being used to enact? Relationships. We can look at what sort of relationship is a piece of language seeking to enact with others, whether they are present or not, because we use language to signal the kinds of relationships that we want to have, or that we have, or that we're trying to have with either the listeners or a reader or some other groups and institutions. There are two different levels of intimacy implied if you use different phrases in terms of closeness. If someone says, Dr. Winters, can I have a word? That's different from saying, Christy, can I have a word? Immediately, the use of my title implies something about the relationship between me and the person who's saying that to me. Now, they might be using it ironically. They might not know me, so they're using it formally. Maybe they're angry with me. So all of these things would contextualize the relationship being demonstrated through the use of either Dr. Winters or Christy. And we can use language, when we're mindful of it, to understand how these relationships are being built. Certainly the fact that I call Carl, Carl, as opposed to Sargon, is I'm building a different kind of relationship in that space than someone who would use his moniker and call him Sargon. Politics. We use language for the distribution of social goods. So if we looked at how language is used in a political way, what perspective on the social good is a piece of language communicating? So what does this piece of language assume is normal or right or good or correct or appropriate or valuable, or the way things ought to be, or to be like me or not like me? So the distribution of social goods through language is something else that's very important to look for. One can look for this in a discourse analysis to understand where the speaker is coming from or what effect the speaker wants to have on the audience. Connections also is important. The use of language to render certain things connected or relevant to each other or not. So things are not always connected inherently. We use language to bring them together. We use language to tie ideas together so that people understand where we're coming from. And if we want to understand how a speaker is using language to connect ideas, we can ask ourselves, how does this piece of writing or speaking connect or disconnect things? Try to say two things that are normally thought of together to push them apart. And then how does it go about making this stuff relevant or irrelevant? As an example, you guys might know occasionally, although I'm getting, to be honest, fed up with it. I spar with V in direct messages. We go back and forth. And I recently was putting up a lot of examples, the way that the Republicans in the United States are actively attacking women's abortion rights, contraception rights, free access to, or accessing Planned Parenthood. They're definitely going after Planned Parenthood, not only for the abortion services, but any services. And when I point this out, he'll say something really stupid, like, well, then women should just vote. And what you're trying to do here is say all women are a monolith. He's connecting women to a certain kind of, not only of an election outcome, but a policy outcome, which is one step removed from the election outcome. And I just have to, at some point, go, this is so stupid. Like, and it's a waste of my time to even engage with you, because when I bring you serious issues and I show you the connections of power and social goods, you just use stupid sound bites. You're not mentally engaging. You're just saying, oh, all women should use identity politics and vote on this. I'm like, well, then you're wasting my time. So anyway, that's just showing an example of real life, how people try to make connections between things and how they can be contested. And I think this might be the last one, but maybe not. Sign systems and knowledge. The way that we use language to make certain signs or symbols or forms of knowledge or belief relevant, or forms of knowledge and belief privileged or not in a given situation. So a question you could ask yourself is, how does this piece of language privilege or disprivilege specific sign systems like English versus Spanish, or technical language versus everyday language, words versus images, words versus equations, or different ways of knowing or believing or claiming to have knowledge or what you believe. Yeah. So those are ways that we can analyze language from, well, this is like one subset of one category of a form of analysis of how we can analyze language. And yeah, milk-fed gimp, someone says. And I think it is really useful to think systematically, reflect a little bit, not only what someone says to you maybe on Twitter, but use this and unpack how they constructed their tweet, how they connected things or disconnected things, or, try to, privilege some kinds of information, or to enact an identity through their language, because it is not just a neutral tool that we all pick up and use in the same way. Language is very much a contested social construct that does influence our perceptions of reality. All right, so that is that. Let me go back to cute puppies. How about? And I'll look at the chat, see what you guys have to say. I've got you on the other screen, so we've got, I'm competing with cute doggies again. All right. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit. I see, wait, hold on. Oh, 250 in the house. Hello. Statistics was one of the reasons I dropped out of uni, to be honest. Oh, Mithril, you should have taken my class. You should have taken my stats class, at least for the social sciences. Because one of the things that I taught was that, for the purposes of my course, because I had to teach research methods and philosophy and ethics and stats and how to use the computer's systems, the computer software, SPSS, and interpret the results and write up the results. It wasn't just a stats course, but what we did go over was the logic of the equations. And if you understand the logic of the equation and what it is attempting to parse and how to correctly interpret and write up the results, it's so much easier. So I'm sorry that stats was one of the reasons that you left, because I understand how I am not a maths person, so I can completely relate to that. Discourse cropped up all the time at university. I hated it. Well, it is a technical term because it's a linguistic way for us to speak about a very precise thing, which is all of the image and language, what's the other, like memes, anything else around a topic can be considered a discourse. So like a neoliberal discourse, or a critical theory critique, or maybe not, a Marxist discourse, something else. And it's not meant to be alienating, it's just talking about a type of data or knowledge or use of it. Let's see, mid-morning, somebody couldn't sleep. Oh, sorry, you couldn't sleep, 250. Left is not liberalism anyway. Yeah, Prager loves liberalism despite being the most illiberal person of all. Correct, they don't use words. Prager is very bad at using words accurately. Listen to a radio discussion about Brexit with relations to the House of Lords. Some Tory baroness trotted out the Soros, oh gosh, trope. Yeah. Listening to how different people talk about Brexit using discourse analysis would be very insightful, because you could definitely see patterns in how the phrases people use, who are pro and con, and then I bet if you applied those frameworks, to something like question time, you could almost look for certain key things in ways that people phrase things or set up the logic of things to predict if they're going to be, pro or anti-Brexit afterwards. Let's see. Jordan B. Peterson enacts himself as a lobster. Yeah, a little bit linguistically. Gamins have no sense of irony. Anything else? Okay, how old is that picture of you on the notes? Question, how old was that picture of you on the notes? I don't know what notes. Oh, this one. I had my hair this short after the last general election because I cut my hair off during the last general election, so that would have been 2017. That picture. I wasn't sure what picture you had taken, and sorry, I should show you guys what is being talked about here. This picture of me in the corner, I think, is what was being referred to. So yeah, back to cute puppies. Oh no. Sorry. Didn't mean to put the music back on there. Went one thing too high. Other things from the chat. I think that was about it. Project Fear, if someone says that, they'll probably leave. Yeah, that's precisely like one of the things you would look at a discourse analysis, is the use of those kinds of phrases to frame it, and in what situations, and what situations they didn't do it. All right. I didn't really want to have to talk about Joe Biden, but I guess we're going to have to talk about Joe Biden. All right, so catching everybody up, and if you have, yeah, let's talk about Joe Biden. If you have any corrections or anything you want to say to me that you think I've gotten wrong, just say it in the chat and I'll read it out. But the basic premises of this, or the background of this, is Joe Biden has for a very long time been not a great candidate. He was a fine vice president, but because it's been a while since he's run, the primary against Barack Obama, which was 2007-ish, so it's been quite a long time, people tend to forget how problematic and how gaffe prone Joe Biden is. No, a lot of people say his heart is in the right place, and I don't doubt that, but it doesn't change the fact that he puts his foot in his mouth a lot. And not only that, he has had this kind of boomer take on interactions with people. By boomer, I mean generationally. In particular, the idea that a lot of paternalistic older men have, that, they are entitled to be intimate or to touch women who are younger than them or lower than status, and that it's going to be interpreted by those women as fatherly or kind, or I don't know, I guess fatherly is really the way to put it, and that's paternalistic. You're not treating someone like an equal if you treat them like a child. Joe Biden has, because he's running for president, or he's gearing up to run for president, this issue has resurfaced. A woman, Flores, I think, I should have checked this beforehand, but I didn't do all that. I'm a little bit lame on my research. Came out to say that she had felt uncomfortable with when he was inappropriately sort of intimate with her, not sexually, but definitely space invading, touching your body, assuming a kind of level of intimacy that doesn't really exist in America. Now, if you're European, this is going to be a bit maybe harder for you to understand, because you are quite accustomed to kisses on the cheek, and to, greeting someone, or very shortly after you meet them, to become in a relationship, that the next time you see them, you do kiss them on the cheek, or once or twice or 3 times or 4 times, depending on where you are. Americans have a lot more personal space than that. Give me land, lots of land, and the open skies above. Don't fence me in. Americans like their space, like more so than a lot of people. They have a sense of like personal space. I still myself find I find that in airports, when I'm with a lot of Europeans, I end up doing my arms akimbo like this, and I will move myself around, like, oh, I'll check my phone, and because I'm like, get off my back. If I can feel you breathing on my neck, you're too close. With that understanding too, for the Europeans, when someone especially a person with a lot of power, a lot of stature, invades your personal space like that, touches your body, nuzzles your hair, smells your hair, touches your head to his, whatever it is, you are put into a situation where you are now in an asymmetrical power situation. You're in the moment not expecting it. One of the women whose information I read said that they were just talking, and then all of a sudden he grabbed the back of her head and just pulled it in so that their foreheads were touching. And, you're shocked. So what do you do in the moment? If you're on camera, you are also seized up with, I don't want to embarrass him or myself in this moment. Is this going to end? And the whole point of this is that while Joe's intentions might have been good, the effects were negative. What bothers me about a lot of this conversation is that it's centered around his intentions and not the effects of his behavior. The issue isn't whether or not Joe Biden intended to make women feel uncomfortable. The fact is that Joe Biden made women feel uncomfortable. If the effect of his behavior was to make them uncomfortable, then he owes them an apology. That's just how it goes. If I step on your foot and you go, ow, okay, I didn't break your foot. I didn't, smash it into pieces, but I hurt you. I inadvertently hurt you, even if it wasn't my intention to step on your foot because I wanted to dance with you. If I plant my foot on top of yours and you say, ow, I don't just go, well, I didn't mean to step on your foot. So, no apology. No, you go, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But we're going to hear Joe's response. And then we're also going to talk about the fact that he's already making jokes about it. And a little bit about why the issue here shouldn't be Joe Biden's feelings or Joe Biden's intentions. The issue here should be, what does he have to do to modify his behavior to make women not feel uncomfortable? And when is he going to apologize to the women he inadvertently made feel uncomfortable? That doesn't seem to be something that's going to happen. Right. So I've queued this up to the clip from CNN. We're just going to watch the Biden part of the video, and I hope all of the sound works. So if there's any problems, let me know.
Month, I expect to be talking to you about a whole lot of issues, and I'll always be direct with you. But today I want to talk about gestures of support and encouragement.
All right, let's go back a little bit because I've turned the sound up a bit. So I know it starts at 15 because I watched it before. I didn't watch it, I queued it up. I'd rather go back there. Okay. I'm going to go back to, sorry, I'm going to be perfect. All right, there we go. Now I think the desktop audio is about right. And away we go.
Month, I expect to be talking to you about a whole lot of issues, and I'll always be direct with you. But today I want to talk about gestures of support and encouragement that I've made to women and some men that have made them uncomfortable. And I always try to be, in my career, I've always tried to make a human connection. That's my responsibility, I think. I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, you can do this. And whether they're women, men, young, old, it's the way I've always been.
Me, this is how I do it. This is how I make my connections. Oh, you guys can't see the clip. I'm so sorry. Thank you, guys. Yes. Who is that? Too Fitty. Thank you so much for that. I got so distracted with the sound. All right, let's try that one more time. When I do the clips highlight of this, I'm going to edit out all of these mistakes. So let's pretend like we didn't do that. All right. So starting with the clip for the first time, guys, let's go ahead and watch and listen to what Joe Biden has to say.
A whole lot of issues, and I'll always be direct with you. But today I want to talk about gestures of support and encouragement that I've made to women and some men that have made them uncomfortable. And I always try to be, in my career, I've always tried to make a human connection. That's my responsibility, I think. I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, you can do this. And whether they're women, men, young, old, it's the way I've always been. It's the way I've tried to show I care about them and I'm listening.
Me, this is what I do. This is how I relate to people. I touch them, I hug them, I reach out, I shake their hand. Very I-focused. If we use the principles of discourse analysis, what is he making significant here? Himself. What kind of connections is he making? His physical contact with him being a good, supportive person. What things is he not bringing up? the effects that his behavior might be having on other people. So let's see where he goes with this. But already, the skills that we looked at in the discourse analysis from the Gee book are helping us to understand the way that Joe Biden is constructing his apology, or not his non-apology video explanation here.
And over the years, knowing what I've been through, the things that I've faced, I've found that scores, if not hundreds of people have come up to me and reached out for solace and comfort, something, anything that may help them get through the tragedy they're going through. And so it's just who I am. And I've never thought of politics as cold and antiseptic. I've always thought it about connecting with people. As I said, shaking hands, hands on the shoulder, a hug, encouragement. And now it's all about taking selfies together. Social norms have begun to change.
He's really not. Okay, so we've been going, he started at 15, it's now 127 in. He's not talking at all about the perspective of the people that he's made uncomfortable. It's all justification of why he's right and why he's been right to do this. Now, if it's not also a completely different thing, if other people come up to him looking for hugs, that's great. If other people initiate something and you consent, go ahead and give it. But the assumption that when he does these things to people, it comforts them is a false assumption, because it doesn't always make people feel better. Sometimes it makes people feel really uncomfortable. And instead of acknowledging that, he's defending why he keeps touching people, which means he doesn't get it. Doesn't get it.
They've shifted, and the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it. I get it.
Do you?
I hear what they're saying.
Do
I
you?
understand it.
Do you?
And I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility.
Okay.
My responsibility, and I'll meet it. But I'll always believe governing, quite frankly, life for that matter, is about connecting.
This is why he gets it wrong. This is why he gets it wrong. It's not about him. And he thinks it's about him. What he doesn't realize is that what we're talking about are the effects of his behavior on others. And that's not what he's acknowledged in over 1 minute and 30 seconds. He's not said, I violated some people's personal space and it made them feel uncomfortable. And I want to acknowledge that me initiating contact with women, I don't know their background. I don't know what kinds of parts of their, there are some people who maybe when they were attacked, like someone would grab their shoulders and shake them. So you can't assume that everyone you touch on the shoulders, that's going to be comforting. But he's basically saying, I'm not going to change anything about what I believe, but I will just try to respect your personal space a little bit more. It means he doesn't really get it. He's not really understanding. He might be listening, but he's not hearing or empathizing. He's putting himself before the effects of his behavior.
About connecting with people. That won't change, but I will be more mindful and respectful of people's personal space. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I've worked my whole life to empower women. I've worked my whole life to prevent abuse.
Again, this is the whole I'm an ally, I can't do anything wrong. Because of my record on women, I get to, get a pass on when I make women feel uncomfortable. No! No, what you should be saying is, I will listen to women more. I will try to understand these objections more, and I will try to work with women, not only to make sure that they always feel respected and treated like professionals, but that we continue on with our political agenda. But that's, again, not what he's saying.
I've written, and so the idea that I can adjust to the fact that personal space is important, more important than it's ever been, is just not thinkable.
Well, if that's the case, then you should apologize for making people uncomfortable in the past. And say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, that was never my intention, but that's what I did. This is the effect I had on you, and my heart breaks to think that I left you feeling less reassured than when I met you, or less comfortable in yourself, or embarrassed. And I apologize for that entirely. That would be the grown-up thing to do.
I will.
So, not good enough.
Let's talk all about this. I've got with me
not good enough. I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. And the other thing that I saw put in my bookmarks, oh yes, the other way that you demonstrate that you haven't actually taken these things seriously is that you joke about them. in certain ways. And here we're going to see Joe Biden demonstrate that he might hear the conversation about personal space, but he hasn't internalized it yet.
I want you to have to stand all along, but it's up to... By the way, he gave me permission to touch him. Why did you sit in the room like that?
You know, what you could do is actually demonstrate obtaining consent, if he wanted to make that point. He's like, is it all right if I put my arm around you? Now, of course, that even isn't a true form of obtaining consent, because the kid is in a public situation and is being pressured by somebody much older and with power to put his arm on his shoulders. And what's the kid going to say? No? I mean, that would be socially awkward. So even in these situations, obtaining consent isn't done in necessarily an uncoercive situation. I am not, you know, if it's the case that Joe Biden ends up being the nominee, I'll vote for him. But frankly, I'm sort of not very jazzed about his candidacy. I think he's incredibly gaffe prone. I've said this before. I said this with Kevin on the Happy Hour ages ago. People don't remember how poor he is as a candidate. He's not that great as a candidate. He makes a lot of gaffes and screws a lot of things up. And he's already, you know, there's a perception that Trump has bested him on Twitter. And he's not even announced as a candidate yet. As a consequence, I'm not going to actively like dissuade people from supporting Joe Biden, because mostly I don't think I'll have to. I think his candidacy will probably sputter out and he'll withdraw from the race. But, you know, I could be proven wrong. I just sort of feel like his time has come and gone. And what also really sets off red alarms, to be honest. Can I find it? Oh, we got stupid, yeah, Candace Owens. But I thought I had highlighted maybe I didn't. Tucker Carlson on Fox News after sort of went with the Joe Biden's touching everybody story and then withdrew it, did an apology going, oh, we added to the Joe Biden hugging hysteria because, and Bill Maher is on this agenda too. There is a faction, or, you know, there are a bunch of people who have this perspective that Me Too is valid in certain situations and invalid in other situations, particularly when it comes to rape or sexual harassment or sexual abuse. Then they go, oh yeah, that's Me Too. But when it comes to lower level things like violating women's personal space, making women feel uncomfortable, they want to put that in a different category of that's not the same thing as sexual harassment, because they want to focus on sort of the level of negative impact on women. And when I have a sort of cutoff going, well, if someone just reaches out and touches your knee or grabs your shoulder or says something like, smile, sweetie, or a man spreads in front of you, women should just have to tolerate that. We understand as men that you shouldn't have to tolerate sexual harassment in the workplace, or guys shouldn't be taking out their penises and doing stuff in front of you. I totally get that. But you're going too far when you complain about someone, you know, grabbing your shoulder or touching your head or sneaking up behind you and smelling your hair. That's just, you know, oh, you're being ridiculous. And unfortunately, I think that's the sort of battle now that's where the contestation will take place. Until people like this internalize that it's the effect on women that's the same, that there's a negative effect, you know, whether on a spectrum of, you know, made to be felt uncomfortable to violated, there is a spectrum of those things, and they cross over sometimes. It's not like this is this kind of harassment women have to tolerate or should tolerate, or we're going to make fun of them if they tolerate, if they complain about it. But there's other stuff, yeah, okay, ladies, we'll be with you on your side there. And I'm done with it. I'm just going to call it out. I'm just going to explain why they're wrong. And why it's not up to Joe Biden, for instance, to say, I, me, my intentions. Or Bill Maher to say, come on, Joe Biden, he's not Harvey Weinstein. Well, so what if he's not Harvey Weinstein? What does that matter? As I pointed out on Twitter, you don't point to someone who's stolen, you know, like a Ford and go, well, why are you angry at this guy who only stole one car when this guy over here stole 15 limousines or Hummers? Like, but they're both car thieves. You know, you don't get to say, oh, because, you know, this serial killer existed, this person here who committed, you know, manslaughter by driving drunk, somehow, it's not such a big deal. And yet we do that with sexual harassment all the time, or in things that women are inconvenienced by. Having strange men walk up and you go, smile. Why? Because that man wants to feel good about himself, to have a woman smile, or to give himself the idea that by making a woman smile, he's now done something that's praiseworthy. Like, it's not up to me to like smile and perform for you like a little puppet so you walk away feeling good about yourself. Meanwhile, you know, like, I've just performed a little thing for you because you're a man on demand, and we're in a society where if I say no, suddenly I'm the bitch. You know, and those are the dynamics that Me Too now is also applicable to. It's not only the big stuff, it's everything that contributes to the big stuff. Right, people, so I am going to take a break. We've been going for 50 minutes. As I said, I think this show is going to be a little bit on the shorter side. I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like I have the energy for PragerU. I've got so much in my mind about my ticket and my packing and getting, you know, onto my train, and so I just feel like I want to be getting on with my day. So instead, what I would suggest is that we go for the 5-minute break. You guys listen to some more Yellow Cab, I think, that I've got for you. I gave you some new music this week. Then we'll come back and we'll go through my bookmarks for maybe 30 minutes, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I still have to do my calls to my family, do my final checks, you know, get my passport ready, make sure I've got everything, my hotel reservations, and I just want to get that out of the way. Right. Yes, and I agree with Mike. Bill Maher's defense was horrible. Hey, I will see you guys back at 3 minutes to the top of the hour, where you are. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll do more. I will also, by the way, when I come back, I will do more stuff in the chat. So I see 250. He's got is that a smiley? Is that sad face because I want to wrap up the show a half hour early? So that sad face from 250 is going to be the new line of questions, things you want to talk about. So when we get back, I will look at the chat, we'll look at the bookmarks, and then I am going to get on the road. So, and I lied. I said, yeah, okay, 57, now 2 minutes before the top of the hour instead of 3. All right. See you in a bit, and enjoy the music. Hello again, everyone. Hello. Yes, I'm a little bit early, maybe like by about 30 seconds, but oh well. Hit back if you come back punctually a minute later from now. Also, I should say, I realized, and I forgot to tell you, another reason why I'm a little bit distracted from today's content is that tonight, around 9 o'clock my time, approximately, I am going to be recording an episode for Serious Inquiries Only with Thomas Smith. And the topic is going to revolve in part about sampling and survey design and types of surveys. So I want to do some research into, I'm going to download like my lecture notes on sampling and statistical significance and other things, because I want to review for that interview later on as well. So I have many things that are going on. By the way, right, I don't know if you guys know Chris Evans or not. He does a lot of political stuff. He's very pro Kamala Harris, but he also does these threads where he'll watch something for the first time and react to it, and they are so funny. And I didn't mean to talk about this. I hadn't meant to, but since it came up in here. So he'll write things like this. Let's see. Oh my god, someone just got decapitated in the first 5 minutes of this bitch. You know, going down. Spoilers for Game of Thrones, by the way. Go, yeah. Oh, Nikolai Coster-Waldau is in this. Does he get naked? Asking for a friend. He's gay, so he's not asking for a friend. What else? Is Winterfell the name of something, or are they literally just telling us it's winter? What's going on? I just want to reach through the screen and hand these people some shampoo and conditioner. If you like that sort of snarky bit, stuff going on, check out. It's bookmarked on my thing, on my Twitter feed. That's what I'm looking for. Right. Other things that we can chat about a little bit. Oh, I was going to look at the comments, but to be honest, you guys don't have too many comments. I see people have bathroomed. That's good. Physically really get comfortable. That's happy. And yeah, Christy's sponsored by the Game of Thrones. I'm quite keen. I'm looking forward to the last one coming out, by the way. This is something I bookmarked because I thought it was important. 3 historically black churches have been burned in less than 2 weeks in a row in one Louisiana parish, where officials said they had found suspicious elements in each case. There is certainly something happening in this community, said the state fire marshal. Yeah, racist clan descendants. That's what's happening. And white nationalism, authoritarianism, the attacks on our democracy are growing every day in this country. We are now, looking at not only winning government, but protecting democracy by electing Democrats. An investigation by USA Today, Arizona Central, and Publica found 10,000 pieces of copycat state legislation introduced since 2011, with over 2,000 passed into law. Bills that were written by special interests and not lawmakers. The Republicans churn out copycat pro-corporate legislation through what's called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, but it's really just a corporate place, a corporate annual gathering where Republicans go to uniformly pass anti-worker, anti-environment, poor pro-corporate raider legislation, and they want to make it identical across every state to make it easier for businesses. So they're just anti-democratic, awful people who don't value democracy. I mean, they really are. We have to vote them out of office and take away all of their political power because they can't be trusted with it. Here's Biden joking about things. Yeah, Candace Owens, this I wanted to look at. I hadn't read this yet. Candace Owens to testify at congressional hearing on hate crimes and white nationalism. Well, that's a little bit strange because, as you know, she said, if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. So let's see, what does this say? Candace Owens, conservative activist, African-American conservative activist, will testify before the Judiciary Committee next week during a hearing on hate crimes and white nationalism. She'll join Eileen Hershanav, Senior Vice President for Policy at the Anti-Defamation League, Eva Patterson, president of Equal Justice Society, and Neil Potts, the policy director of Facebook, among others, for the hearing. 250 asks, what qualifies her to do that? Nothing. I would imagine that the only reason she's being put up there is because some conservative group put her name on the list and said, oh, yes, what we really need is a Turning Points USA person, and who would be better to defend white nationalism than an African-American woman? This hearing will examine hate crimes, the impact white nationalist groups have had on American communities, the spread of white identity ideology. The hearing will also foster ideas about what social media companies can do to stem white nationalist propaganda and hate speech online. I would imagine she will be there to basically say don't. So, Owens rose to national prominence by garnering a large social media following, promoting her ideas that the Democratic Party takes black voters for granted and that they should leave the party in a Blexit, which, to my understanding, is defunct. Like, that's not a real thing. It's not really happening. They don't have any real numbers to show for it. It's all playing on trying to undermine the support of black voters for the Democratic Party, because Republicans don't want anybody to support the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party isn't pro-corporate enough for them, right? Owens drew criticism online in February when she said it would have been okay if Adolf Hitler wanted to keep his activities to Germany. Owens took to Twitter to defend her comment, saying nationalism is sort of conflated with, for some reason, Hitler. That's really, really wrong, and we have to almost correct the record on that. She's going to sound like a moron. I mean, it's just going to be... I mean, she's not articulate. She doesn't know the topic. She doesn't know the data. She doesn't know her history. It's going to be laughable, but the right wing is often laughable on these issues. The problem is that a lot of people who listen to them don't have the education either to realize that they're speaking incorrectly. By the way, I haven't looked for it yet. The next story is from Cambridge. Cambridge staff and students are being harassed by Jordan Peterson fans. They're being abused by Jordan Peterson fans. They're being harassed by Jordan Peterson fans, all because Jordan Peterson went on to whine. Not only did he take his thing gracefully, he didn't take his thing gracefully. Instead, he wrote a big blog, I think we looked at it, where he whined and talked about their ultimate destruction because they're so close-minded. And this is the effect of Jordan Peterson. We know he's a doxer. He's promoted the idea that he lamented the idea that it's socially unacceptable to hit women. We know that he has no respect. He went to Liberty University and said that's where he actually felt like it was a real university. He didn't say those precise words, but basically it's like, here's a place where I don't actually have to worry about anyone challenging my ideas. He felt very safe and at home at Liberty University. And that just tells you a lot about Jordan Peterson. So anyway, the University of Cambridge issued this statement, and it comes from Ian McFarlane, the Regius Professor of Divinity. I don't know if I'm saying that, if it's Regius or Regius, but, quote, on behalf of the Faculty of Divinity, I wish to make clear that the decision to rescind the offer of a visiting fellowship to Jordan Peterson was taken entirely within the faculty. I appreciate that the decision was controversial, but the decision stands. The faculty deplore, in the strongest terms, online abuse against any academics or students, and we would like to assert in the strongest possible terms that the attacks against people outside of the faculty who were in no way involved in our decision are totally unacceptable and must cease. Ooh, oh my, that's unusual, says Regis. So there's another pronunciation option for you. Jordan Peterson leads a band of trolls who harass people online. And this just, if anything, the fact that it produced this reaction proves the point that they were right to deny him or withdraw the invitation, because he is not of a quality or merit to be associated with their department. His followers and the kinds of content and ideas he puts out is not worthy of Cambridge. And the reaction to that realization is evidence that the realization was correct. All right, I mentioned this a little bit on my interview with Bethany Futrell last night. Accused of money laundering in Russia, former North Carolina congressman's bank loses its license. Another example of Russian collusion with Republicans. Here on the state level, another financial tie. Oh, and then there's some video that I think I put in for the video compilations anyway. These were accidental bookmarks when they were meant to be downloads. Let's see, German television ZDF reporting that AfD politician was specifically funded and groomed for control by the Kremlin. Tell me again how, you know, Rachel Maddow is ridiculous for focusing on the way that Russian and Putin's, I wouldn't say Russia, Putin's government tries to undermine stable democracies. He's using the free speech extremists to overturn democracy and replace it with authoritarian dictatorships. I mentioned this to Kevin in the Hangout, the happy hour last night. Why are the pro-Brexit types so opposed to a second vote? Because fascists only want votes that put them into power. They don't really believe in democratic legitimacy or democracy. They simply use the form of democracy to gain political power, and then they deny people the ability to vote them out of power. And that's exactly what they want to do with Brexit. They want to say, only no, the vote that gave us power counts. We don't want to have another vote that could take away our power. That's illegitimate, because we have power now, and we must defend our power even at the sake of democratic legitimacy. And so that's how they try to undermine, that's how Russians try to undermine democracy, is by putting people in there who will not value it and instead be more interested in preserving their own power than preserving the rule of law. Oh, hey, you want to see what an idiot Howard Schultz is? And also how awesome Ali Velshi is on MSNBC? All right, this is actually a really, really good clip, because Ali Velshi, I mean, I'm not an atheist, but he just takes him to church, as they say. He just says some things, some like truth to power, truth to CEO power on this. Are you sure you do business, Ali Velshi? Because I didn't know economists would talk like this. But, oh no, what happened to it? I don't know why it won't go. Let me find it again. Sorry, guys. Bookmarks. I guess I'll have to play it inside the bookmarks rather than opening it up in full. So we can do that. That's fine. Because he does really own Howard Schultz here. And Howard Schultz's responses are so useless. They're so bloody useless. All right. No, I did it again! Can I go back? No, damn you, bookmarks! I fell for you twice. Alright, I'm really not gonna do it. Just really gonna do it this time from here. Right. Sound up. Desktop audio, this should all work. Here we go.
Why do we have K through 12 that's not working? Why is our standing in the world not working? Because of both parties' ideology and unwilling to work together.
This both sides crap is so just empirically untrue. No, I am an atheist, but I was going to use the phrase "taken to church" to Fiddy because it kind of sums up this exchange. But anyway, yeah, just going to point out, it is not, this is the sort of like both sides. There are good people on both sides. He's blaming everything as if Democrats are actively doing the same things that Republicans are, which is ridiculous. But anyway, I'm just going to let it play now. If I can. There we go. All right.
That's why I'm considering running for president.
So why is everybody
to break the system?
If that's true, why is Britain bifurcated? Why is France bifurcated? Why is Germany bifurcated? Why were the Arab countries bifurcated? It's not actually about Democrats and Republicans. It's about rich people who don't pay taxes, who don't understand that it's not about charity. It's actually about wealth distribution. Right? Why, if that's your explanation, why is Britain bifurcated?
We're now going to talk about what's going on.
No, but you're telling me that our bifurcation, economic bifurcation in America is because of Democrats and Republicans not agreeing on policy? Why is Britain bifurcated?
I'm talking about the lack of leadership and understanding of the fiscal responsibility of elected officials to do the right thing for the American people.
So in each case that I just outlined, but that's because that's not the answer in all those countries, and yet the world is bifurcated.
I'm not here talking about all these countries.
But you're saying that the reason we're economically bifurcated is because of Republican and Democrat policies, and I'm telling you it's a global issue of wealth concentration, not actually about political disagreement on policies.
Do you want to talk about each country? You want to put China up here?
No, but I think we can cut this any way you want, right? How many rich people in America could have the wealth of the bottom half of society? How many rich people in the world have the same wealth as the bottom 3.5 billion in society? Oxfam says it's 28. Under 10.
Listen,
about 28?
I didn't create the policies that we are now under. I'm here to tell you that I am looking at the current situation economically in this country, and if you want to solve the problems, you have to have the kind of leadership that cooperates with one another and is not steeped in ideology. Okay.
You can't cooperate with a fascist because they won't compromise. They won't give you anything that gives up their power, and this is why he's living in a delusional, world. And yeah, Ali Velshi, talk about wealth inequality and its destabilizing of factors. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's talk about that all day long. Yeah, Mithril, look at him, he's so gormless. How dare you criticize me getting all the money? Exactly. And he doesn't have any policy response to that. He's just like, oh, the problem is Democrats and Republicans are fighting. No, the problem is not that Democrats and Republicans are fighting. One of the problems here is the wealth inequality after is exposed by the financial crash and the recent tax favoring the tax policies Republicans favor toward the rich is producing unease, economic displacement, economic vulnerability all the way down the rest of the economic, anyone who's not them. And that pushes people to the right. Economic uncertainty, we know, has a rightward effect. It pushes people increasingly to the political right. You are more likely to get countries that have economic hardship, that blame immigrants and become more xenophobic as their economic insecurities grow. So keeping a populace not only, down economically, but burdened by debt and keep wages flat, and then fill them with fear and tell them that's all the immigrants' problems. And that's Fox News, basically. Your face is bifurcated. I assume that was to him, to Howard Schultz, not me. Okay. And then we got the artifacts that I did. Oh, hey, yeah, I was trolling Dankula a little bit. Do you remember when Count Dankula said that all the money he raised from his his pro-Nazi video, that all of the money that he raised was going to go on his legal bills, and anything that wasn't spent for his legal expenses would go to charity? I think that's been like a year ago now or something. And I was curious as to what are his financial records. Like, can we see them? Can he demonstrate that the funds that he collected and the payments to his attorney show the balance precisely? That he's not taken any of that out for personal spending or anything like that? Because it's not a rule I put on Dankula. He put this out on himself. But yeah, as Mike says, show us the money. Like, look at Femme Frequency. They do really good reporting in terms of transparency. You can use that for a model. So hey, Dankula, show me the money? So please, he's got me blocked because he's a coward. People can ask him about when he's going to provide an update on how much money he's donated to charity out of those funds. Because I heard from everybody when he was fundraising, that money's going to go to charity. Any excess funds are going to go to charity. And I don't buy that for a minute. I don't buy that for a minute. All right, another story here from the bookmarks. There's a story covered here in CBS News, which you think is kind of like a heartwarming story, but I have a larger point about it. Yes, I accept your cookies. A group of teen girls in Maryland is fighting back after their male classmates circulated a list. Girls in Maryland. Shut up. Circulated a list rating and ranking 18 of them by their appearance. The Washington Post first reported that the list was sent around the Bethesda Chevy Chase High School earlier this month. 6 of the girls who appeared on the list told CBS News that when they saw the list, they felt objectified and decided it was time to stop accepting this excuse that boys will be boys. Right? This is it. Oh, we have to think about the boys' feeling. They didn't mean, they're just, oh, it's out of their control. Joe Biden just, wants to make connections with people. It's always about like focusing on the men's feelings in order to defend their behavior instead of looking at the effects of their behavior. Jane Corcoran, or Corcoran said she never wants another girl to feel the way she did when she saw her appearance rated on a list circulated by boys at her high school. I think that the female generation is always thinking, what did I do to deserve this? And the answer is we did not do anything, Corcoran said. In my head, I try to push away the thought that, a number does not define me, and I put out a confident front, but it's really hard to think about, why is this girl a point better than me? She was not alone. She and 17 other girls appeared on the list, and some told us they also found themselves questioning their worth. When I saw the list, my initial reaction was just to feel kind of gross, said senior Annabelle Kim. So the girls decided to take action. First, they took their concerns to the administrators, but when they reportedly learned only one male student was being punished, they took it further by calling for a meeting. The main focus of the meeting was not to patronize, not to point fingers, but rather to educate, Corcoran said. The girls said that more than 70 students showed up, including some of the boys who created and circulated the list. Quote, a lot of the girls shared their personal experience with the list and how it made them feel, and also experiences with misogyny and degradation and objectification and sexual harassment, Paloma DeLego said. Now the girls are hosting similar co-ed meetings regularly. Next week, they are hosting an event on toxic masculinity and sexual violence. They've also spoken with younger students, hoping to set a precedent that this is not okay. The principal told CBS News in a statement she is proud of the students who worked together to move forward from this incident. The Post spoke to the boy who first created the list. It reports he is remorseful, agrees it is time for change, and is grateful the girls spoke up. And you might go, oh, that's a wonderful story. Oh, that's a wonderful story. These girls took something that was going to degrade them and they turned it into something positive. And this is the same thing with racial justice. And it's the same thing with, mainstreaming same-sex couples and mainstreaming trans people's lives and their experiences as being valid. Why should the girls who were objectified and humiliated have to be the ones who teach the sexist boys who objectified and humiliated them? Not only are they the objects of the ridicule, but then they are also their rescuers. And this is unfair burden. This is why we do need allies. When men or boys do this to women and they make us feel degraded or objectified, to then expect us to rise above it and be the better person and then fix our own problems with fix the other person's bigotries against us. All the effort is being put on the victim, and there's no discussion of the responsibility of the person who's the jerk. And being an ally, whether, as a white person, me speaking up for racial justice is doing that work. It's trying to lift some of the burden off of the expectation that black people have to educate white people to be not racist. Just like women have to educate men to not be sexist. No. Men need a culture where sexism isn't acceptable. White America needs to have a culture where it is not acceptable to be racist. It's not up to the people that are victims of our privilege to rescue us. We should be rescuing them from the effects of our privilege. And so I wrote, yes, it is absolutely fantastic that these girls, targeted by classmates' toxic masculinity, transformed sexist dehumanization into education. It'd be even better if we as adults created a society where girls aren't the ones who must educate their classmates out of sexism. Where was that principle? Oh, isn't it lovely that the girls are doing this? Where are you, lady? Where are you in your participation of raising, influencing this next generation of young men? You punished one student, allegedly, and you basically pushed it off on the girls to do it themselves. You're part of the problem. Joe Biden is part of the problem. All of this. Displacing, it was Joe Biden's feelings. It was, the boys are just going to be boys. All of this stuff it's just a double burden that's faced, and it's a triple burden. If you're a black woman, you're a black trans woman, that's where all the different ways that you are being marginalized, you can't possibly solve and be expected to save everyone else and teach everyone else out of their bigotry. So there's a little venting on that. All right, this is great. This is from the New Yorker. The image of a woman who is, they didn't actually burn people at the stake. They hanged witches in Salem. But a woman at the stake you know, like to be burned as a witch, and a man saying, let me start by saying no one is a bigger feminist than me, but I'm still going to burn this woman at the stake anyway. And that is exactly the perfect sort of, you know, faux male feminism. You know, it's a defense, it's not a practice kind of thing. Chevy Chase. Why are you guys talking about Chevy Chase? Chevy Chase is a place in England. Oh, you guys, okay. I thought maybe I mispronounced it. Oh, this is very, okay, yeah. Okay. I don't know if you guys follow Greg Palast. He's keeping an eye on all of the dodgy Republican stuff that goes on, you know, all their attempts to try to disenfranchise people and suppress the vote system. And actually, we can scroll up. I know exactly what this is referring to. Right. So after 6 years of investigating Chris Kobach's interstate cross-check voter purge program, the entire racially biased, violently partisan voter suppression tactic is on its way. It's on the verge of collapse. And somebody posted underneath that, a statistical analysis of interstate cross-check methodology found that it was likely to result in a 300-to-1 false positive ratio. 99.7% of the voters the system flagged were legitimate. That's voter suppression by design. So yes, Republicans hate democracy. They're not patriots. They're authoritarian fascist opponents. So this also sad, but maybe demonstrates we're going in the right direction, at least with some people. A Washington student staged a walkout after one of their classmates did this incredibly racist ass thing. So students at Washington State High School staged a walkout in the pouring rain Wednesday to protest a classmate's racist invitation to the school dance. Hundreds of teenagers at Issaquah High School organized the protest over a picture posted to social media which showed a teenage boy, a white, they left that out, a white teenage boy. You can see here, you can see her arms, you can see his hand. Why isn't it relevant that he was white? He was white. I'm going to put that in there. A white teenage boy and a white girl holding a poster that reads, redacted, if I was black, I'd be picking cotton, but instead I pick you. T-O-L-O. I don't know what, oh, T-O-L-O, the reportlet outed, is an upcoming dance at the high school, which is located in a suburb east of Seattle. The picture began circulating online after it was posted over the weekend. The high school principal denounced the photo, saying the school does not condone acts of racism or hate. The school district officials are investigating the students seen in the picture. The students could face disciplinary actions such as partial suspension or expulsion. The girl photographed has reportedly apologized for her involvement online. There always has to be grace and forgiveness in this situation, said. I mean, I know they're right, but we're always working on what does it take to be forgiven? Like, well, what do you have to demonstrate to be forgiven? That's not the question here. Like, what do you have to demonstrate? If you're offering somebody forgiveness and they haven't asked for it, that's not forgiveness. That's just cover up. You know what I mean? Joe Biden, he didn't give an apology. You know, you shouldn't say he should be forgiven for what he did because he didn't admit to doing anything wrong in terms of acknowledging the effects of it. Anyway, a pair of Minnesota high school students were condemned earlier this year for a Nazi-themed high school dance invite that invoked Hitler. Sweethearts would be a Hitler without you, and I could not see myself going with anybody else. Be mine, yes or nine. I get that the younger generation, if you don't learn about the Holocaust and its effects, this is why we never forget. People are forgetting. It's good that it's getting blowback and feedback, and actually what I might end on, instead of PragerU, there was a really good Vox article, Great Awakening, which I thought about talking on my show with last night, but we didn't have so many people, so I didn't bring it up. Okay. The Great Awakening is about changes in voter demographics. I would recommend you guys go check out this article. It's pretty deep. I mean, it's pretty long. I won't have a chance to get through all of it. But to me, what's really fascinating is the results of this map on pretty well to the feelings I have about what I'm seeing in the Democratic Party and online socially as well. So I guess we'll start. For all the attention paid in politics, by the way, this is written by Matt Yiglias. I'm just going to just speak with confidence and hope it's close. For all the attention paid to the politics of the far right in the Trump era, the biggest shift in American politics is happening somewhere else entirely. In the past 5 years, white liberals, and by here they mean people who are politically to the center left and left, right? So we have to remember that the way people use the word liberal as a pejorative in the progressive community is not what they mean here. There's like an online social media discussion, and then there's sort of like the liberals versus conservatives, and I'm confident that in this article they're talking about liberals versus conservatives, not progressives versus liberal or sort of liberal centrists, okay? In the past 5 years, white liberals have moved so far to the left on questions of race and racism that they are now on these issues to the left of even the typical black voter. This change amounts to a great awakening, comparable in some ways to the enormous religious foment in the white North in the years before the American Civil War. It began roughly with the 2014 protest in Ferguson, Missouri, when activists took advantage of ubiquitous digital video and routine use of social media to expose a national audience in a visceral way to what otherwise might have been a routine local news story. If there had been no Twitter or Facebook, Columbia University's John McWhorter, an early and somewhat skeptical observer of the awakening, tells me, Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown would have had about as much impact on white thought as, say, Amadou Diallo did, which as a white person, clearly it demonstrates my ignorance because I don't know who that person is. Pollsters began to see a rapid, sustained change. White Democrats suddenly started expressing dramatically higher levels of concern about racial inequality, and discrimination, while showing greater enthusiasm for racial diversity and immigration. While political disputes around race are often found under the same umbrella as gender and sexual orientation, where attitudes are also shifting, the relatively sudden change that constitutes the Great Awakening is fundamentally about race and its relationship to national identity. There's also a certain paradox to the awakening. As white liberals became more vocal about racial inequality, more racially conservative Democrats left the party and helped power Donald Trump's electoral victory. This backlash gives the impression that there's a surging tide of white racism in America. But just as slavery was not new to the pre-Civil War period, there's absolutely nothing new about white racism as a force in American politics. Desmond Harris wrote in 2016 that Trump was refreshing not just to people who shared his views, but to people who have always known that views like his existed. Trump has made white racial resentment more visible than it was before, but at the same time, white liberals have become much more attuned to racism, seeing it more of not necessarily because the world has changed, but because their own attitudes toward long-standing features of it have changed. The exact implications for the short-term electoral politics are dicey. Older, more rural, less educated whites who are relatively untouched by the Great Awakening exert disproportionate influence on the political system. But the fundamental reality is that the awakening has inspired a large majority of whites to begin regarding systematic racial discrimination as a fundamental problem in American life, opening up the prospects of sweeping policy change when the newly invigorated anti-racist coalition does come to power. So they start to, look at some polling data here, which we will also look at, and then I will be signing off shortly after because it is 90 minutes. Majority says country needs to continue making changes for racial equality. So these are numbers that are, I think they're at the bottom of the screen in terms of the data. Yeah, source is the Pew Research Center data, and they do ask the same question in the same way to different samples over time, so this should be pretty consistent stimulus in order to produce a comparable result over the decades and years. So in 2009, 47% of people said that America has made the changes needed to give blacks and whites equal rights as whites, and 43% said the country needs to continue making changes to give black blacks equal rights as white. Now, is this white liberals only? No, it's just majority, it says. But it doesn't say majority of white liberals or whatever. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the sample, who this is representing. But now, as you can see, within less than 10 years, and definitely jumping as a result of Trump, the percentage is very different now. 35% instead of 47% agree that with the statement that America has made the changes needed to give blacks equal rights as whites, and up from 43% to 61%, I'm assuming these are the white liberals, who now say the country needs to continue making changes to give blacks and whites equal rights. In terms of the people who say blacks who can't get ahead are mostly responsible for their own condition, in 1994, so this is a different time period, but in 1994, 59 people, percent of the people, respondents, agreed that blacks in America can't get ahead because of their own, that they're responsible for their own condition. 32% people said blacks can't get ahead because racial discrimination is the reason. And now we've seen that 59 drop to 49, drop 10% in terms of people who say it's their own responsibility, and up almost 10% now saying that discrimination is the reason that people can't get ahead. And in terms of the Democrats and lean Democrats compared with whites, I assume that these are white Republicans and white Democrats. It wouldn't make sense. I wish actually Vox had said more than just Pew. They don't really say here whose numbers they are. That's too bad. But if they, so I can't tell you if these are all respondents or just white respondents. But so just qualification or disclaimer in that way. Percent of those who say the country needs to continue making changes to give blacks equal rights as whites is up from 57% for lean Democrats in 2009, up to 81% in 2017. Even with Republicans, it was at 30% in 2009. It's currently at 36%. Was at 36% in 2017. And the percentage of those who say racial discrimination is the main reason why many black people can't get ahead, it was 39% of Dems and leaning Dems who agreed with that statement in 1994, 64% of Dems and lean Dems agreed with it in 2017. But interestingly, Republicans in this way, they've actually, the number who said racial discrimination is the main reason why many black people can't get ahead, only 14% of lean Republicans and Republicans agreed with that in 2017 compared to 26% in 1994. So this article continues. It goes a little bit deeper into this great awakening and changing attitudes towards race and immigration. A lot of it, I think, is attributed to two things. One is the rise of documentation on social media. For me, especially, it has been incredibly powerful to see real-life examples of racist Beckys pulling 911 card calls out of their purse, you know, when they see something they don't like going on, and understanding through observation how white people, the privilege of whites to call 911 on black people to police them as opposed to report crime. The man, for instance, the black man who was homeless, and he had got a job and he had a $100 check written, and because he was black and they knew he was homeless, they assumed it was counterfeit, and they called 911. They called 911 because they thought he had tried to pass a counterfeit check, and it wasn't even counterfeit. Who has to deal with that kind of crap in their day? Not white people. So seeing that, it's more powerful to see it and hear it, to see and hear a racist attack, than hear it described. It's just, you know, seeing things are more powerful. And being presented with case after case after case after case after case. I know from my own experiences, I feel a lot more woke. And I also, I would agree that I'm part of this. Like, I feel much more empowered to speak to racial issues now and call out white racism and white privilege because of my interactions on social media and the kinds of evidence that I see and the connections I make. So I'm probably a very typical person to be part of the Great Awakening. And yeah, I totally am. So check out this article on Vox. It's longer than we have time to go through. Here we go. Just to say, Democrats have become more liberal on race questions. If black people would only try harder, they could be just as well off as whites. That is now more than 60% of Democrats disagree with that statement, and that's up from 54% 5 years ago. Slavery and past discrimination still hold back black people today. 62% of Democrats now agree with that, compared to only in 2016, compared to 48% in 2011. On the question, over the past years, black people have gotten less than they deserve. It was 27% of Democrats who agreed with that in 2011. 55% of Democrats agree with that statement now, or agreed with that statement in 2016. And other minorities overcame prejudice. Black people should do the same without favors. Disagree with that statement was in 37% in 2011, 51%. Now a majority of Democrats disagree with that statement in 2016. These are massive shifts, people, for a 5-year period. Massive attitudinal shifts. You know, when we're talking about, you know, more than double digits, not more than double digits, more than single digits across the board. If it was more than double digits, someone's not doing the math right. But to go from 27% to 55%, that's more than doubling. 37% is not quite doubling. You know, up 20% it's a huge, huge, huge attitudinal shift, and it was necessary, and it will be necessary for us to stay allies, to realize that change that we want to make in the world. All right, so I'm going to look a little bit at your comments. I will switch over now to cute puppies, since we're done with the Vox article, and see what you guys have to say. So let me scroll up a bit here. I found here, your face is bifurcated. Not just economic uncertainty, social uncertainty too. Yes, true. Agreed that, but you know, I think a lot of economic uncertainty and social uncertainty, of course, are linked, right? There's nexes there. Show us the money, Dankula. Yeah, the Count Dankula Beer Fund charity. That's pretty much what it was. Howard Schultz conflates impartiality with objectivity. A lot of centrists do. Yep. A high school named Chevy Chase, and you guys had a whole Chevy Chase conversation. I always wondered where the Piddles in Dorset got their name from. Alright, so you guys are, okay, still talking about Chevy Chase. You have to take gentle collective action. The Minnesota racist thing, you guys are talking about the Nazi-themed high school invite to the dance. Racial conservative, hell of a euphemism. Yeah, you can just say racist. Is racism rising because liberals are more aware of it? Am I reading it wrong? No, it's not that racism is on the increase because liberals are aware of it. It's racism has always been the same, but now liberals, I think social media has opened up an opportunity for white people like me, who are potential allies, but are ignorant and don't have experience and don't know what they're talking about and don't feel comfortable, by having all the racist Becky 911 calls, by having the marches, by bringing these issues to social media, the role of Black Twitter, you know, people sharing things, that awareness is going up. It's like when, you know, if you had a big campaign on how to report sexual assault and sexual assault services, and you did a really big blanket campaign for like 5 years in one area, you would probably see an increase in reported sexual assaults in that area, not because they're going up, it's because people feel more enabled to go and report it, or they know how to report it, or they've had a stigma against reporting removed by seeing that advertising. So racism has always been racism in America. It's just white people were sleeping till now. A lot of us were sleeping. There are also more racists out of the woodwork. Yeah, they're being more open about their racism rather than necessarily being less, or, you know, it's not like they're inventing racism, although some people are being radicalized into it as well. But it's also, there's a whole space to be more racist. And I do think, too, with Trump, because Trump's racism is so in your face, white people are used to really dog-whistled racism. White people in America are used to soft racism, not the kind of in your face, this judge can't be impartial because his family comes from Mexico. That's the sort of racism that makes former Republicans like Joe Scarborough uncomfortable, because he likes to think of the Republican Party as not being racist, when really they're just polite racists. And there's a difference. Once when I was at sixth form college, I reported a boy for slapping a girl in the ass. The lecturer said he'd tell the girl to stand up for herself in future. What the hell? Are you serious? And this is attitude. That is exactly the problem. The onus is on the girl now. Some boy came up to her and slapped her on the ass, and people look at her and go, why didn't you stand up for yourself? Not, who the hell are you, boy, to think you can touch somebody else? That's it, detention. You know? And that's precisely the wrong attitude that we are trying to get around 250, so thanks. Yeah, they're definitely more overt. I know if they're more numerous, they're more visible. That's why there seem to be more of them. And they are emboldened. Yeah, the internet has definitely made things like Ferguson more internationally visible, and it's made fascist, white nationalists more visible too. So, and what do you got, King John? What do you got for us? I'm seeing people are becoming more aware of neoliberalism, as well as looking back to the Reagan years and saying, hey, he effed up a lot of our economy and we are dealing with this today. Yep. I mean, we learned from Reagan on down that you can't, there is no such thing as trickle-down economics. It's just shifting more money over to the wealthy. That's it. Well, guys, I need to go and prep for my Thomas Smith podcast later. I gotta get my smart son, gotta get myself packed, gotta call, I'll do my Sunday calls and catch a train for Bergen. No, not Bergen. That's a different country. I'm going to the Netherlands, and it's like a 3-hour train ride or something. So, until next Sunday, thank you guys so much for watching. There will not be a weeknight Winters, I don't think, because I'm not home until Thursday again, or Wednesday night, and then it'll probably be a happy hour first. But I will be here next Sunday for another Weekend Winters. So thank you guys for stopping by. Thank you for all your comments. I do appreciate your time and attention when you guys come and hang out with me. It's really lovely to have this time with you. So make sure I get the right train. Exactly. Get there plenty early. Although on my ticket, it's highlighted like the date, the time, and the platform. So it's immediately when I pick it up, my eyes go to the top line, and that's when I have to be at the platform. And I'm not too far from the Hauptbahnhof. I mean, if you live anywhere in Cologne, it's pretty easy to get to the main station. So, yeah, I will enjoy the Netherlands. Maybe I will do a video of, you know, some pretty part of the Netherlands, and we can add that to the cookie video. Puppy video. Cookies. I must be getting hungry. That was a Freudian slip. All right, I said I was going to say goodbye. I'm really going to say goodbye. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Christy. You've been awesome. And I wish you guys all the best. Have a great rest of your day. And until next time, bye.